Welcome to the symbolic lodge of conversation, where consciousness and curiosity interweave into discussion. This is All Square Podcast. I'm your host, Darrell Franks, and today I have a dear friend on the podcast who's a member of my lodge. He's an Entered Apprentice. He started his journey years ago, and he has been on his own odyssey with his family, work life, personal life, but he's here today to talk about what brought him to the fraternity and how his journey is taking him forward into the unknown. But the one thing is, he's never alone. This is my brother, Juan Guerrero. Juan, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Juan, we've known each other for about 5 years now.
Roughly, yeah.
When we first met, it was at the Cigar house that I like to attend.
Correct.
You were working there.
Yes.
You were a tobacco enthusiast.
Now certified tobacconist.
That's what it is?
Yeah.
I would have messed that up. What drew you there?
To the cigar shop?
Yeah.
Well, I always had a love for cigars. Always had a love for pipes. I mean, as you can tell right now, I'm smoking a pipe. Not many men my age smoke a pipe anymore, but there's something, I don't know, there's just something unique about it. I've always enjoyed the taste of the different notes of the tobacco. I've always enjoyed the different, the feeling that you get out of it. I love smoking cigars. I love smoking pipes. It's one of my true passions. I don't have many vices in this world. I mean, I don't drink to excess. I don't partake in any hard drugs. I don't, lust after women or anything like that. But there's one thing I do have. It's definitely I smoke. I love to smoke, and I have no intention on stopping. Just saying.
Where did that start, though?
I think it started with my uncle Alex, who lived in Oklahoma. He was an old junkyard guy, and he always used to smoke either cigars or he'd smoke a pipe, always. And he smoked for years he would smoke, and he had the raspiest voice that you could ever hear. He kind of talked like this all the time, and my family, even though my name's Juan, my family down in Oklahoma, they all called me Johnny, right? It's a family thing. People don't call me that, but family does. So he would always kind of be like, Johnny, what are you doing? Come here. He always have a cigar in his mouth. They always have a pipe with him and stuff like that. And I kind of looked up to him because my grandfather, who was his brother, had Alzheimer's. And when I was 9, I took care of him a lot, changing him and feeding him and everything. Because my mom and dad, they worked a lot. They weren't around. So it was me and my grandfather for 6 years of my life, taking care of him and everything. So I didn't have a relationship with him because he had Alzheimer's.
Right.
I only could say a few things. So a lot of my upbringing was with my Theo Alex, and it was because he was around. He would teach me things. He would do things with me. He actually taught me how to play poker and how to get comfortable with losing.
How so? Well, normally somebody wants to, when you play, you're playing to win. So getting comfortable and losing, why would he have focused so much on that?
Mainly because you almost have to, right? Every aspect in our life revolves around very little wins and more losses, right? You're going to laugh. But one of my favorite authors is actually a children's author. It's not some, big name author as far as like they wrote novels upon novels and novels. My favorite author is actually Dr. Seuss. It's funny, I know. But what I liked about Dr. Seuss is he got rejected over 100 times before getting one of his books actually published. And hearing that, I always kind of took solace in that, because that showed me that you have to have 100 losses before you get your wins. And now look at him. He's one of the most iconic children's author that spans through time, So that, to me, is kind of what life is, right? You fall, but you got to learn to have the will to get yourself up out of the dirt, and you have to know when to move forward and to keep striving forward. I think my uncle was trying to teach me that, even though if it was just for poker.
I really appreciate you saying this because that's what I wanted to tie in my intro. As you know, I just freestyle these intros because I'm trying to speak from the heart, but I mean it when I said that you've been on an odyssey. And where was the time and location when you was with your uncle and helping your grandfather? You were where again?
I was here in Toledo.
Okay.
Yeah, I was here in Toledo. My uncle would come up every now and then from Oklahoma and just visit with us and stuff like that. I took care of my grandfather from the age of 9 to the age of 12 because he lived with us and everything, because my father didn't want to put him in a home or anything like that. But
very close family.
At the time it was. Not so much anymore, unfortunately. Time goes forward, elders die, and it just more of the anchors start kind of drifting out, right?
Yeah. Oh, I totally understand that. So you're in Toledo, born and raised, correct?
No, I was born in Oklahoma.
Okay. Born in Oklahoma, in Toledo, helping with the duties around the house, being with your grandfather.
Right.
Any Masonic influence growing up were you familiar with this fraternity?
My first influence with the Masonic would probably come from the same that every child got around the 90s, right? Which was the parades, the Shriners on their little cars and stuff like that. And as a kid, you think it's goofy, with their fezzes and everything else. And so I guess that would be my first Masonic influence. Now, over time, you walk through different cities, you see the square and compass, you see the different symbols, right? The symbolism on architecture, and you see the sayings on different scriptures and stuff like that. And you don't realize how often you see and how much you are influenced by Masonic in general.
Kind of like little beacons, wouldn't you say? Like,
correct.
It was just always in the background.
Always there.
So those little messages.
Always, and you come across yard sales and looking back at it now, being in the fraternity versus, when you first come across it, you go to yard sales and you see family members getting rid of grandpa's stuff, right? And you usually come across a sword, from the Templars, or you come across different, pins and stuff like that involving, the Shriners or Masonic of any kind. And, as a kid going through those yard sales and stuff, you kind of sit there and you look at it and you're like, what is this? What's going on? What are these symbols and stuff like that? So, I mean, looking back at it now, it's kind of sad to know that the families kind of just hawk it, in my opinion. I mean, but back then you don't realize it, but you are influenced by it.
When you were working the cigar house that I was frequently attending, actually a lot of Freemasons, as you well know, was frequently attending. Actually, when they opened up 3rd Street Cigar in Waterville, Ohio.
Correct.
I was hosting a lot of different cigar socials when some of the reps from other places were coming around. Battleground Cigars was a big one. Shout out to Rudy in Fort Wayne. Check out his cigar house, chocolates and wines, Indiana wines. He's a 33rd degree Freemason. You meet so many unique people in cigar houses, I've come to find out. I meet guys from all walks of life. In a way, it's kind of like being in a Masonic lodge because everybody's different. Some are more conservative, some are more liberal, mostly conservative. Some men are more younger, some men are older, some are rough around the edges, some are a little bit more fine.
Correct.
With their personalities.
Right.
But it brings us together with that peace pipe, with the cigars, having a libation. and talking,
Yes.
hearing the stories.
Yes.
Right? So you've had to meet a lot of people in the cigar houses, correct?
I worked the cigar shop probably 2 years. I'd say about 2 years. I don't think any longer than that. And you'd be surprised how many you meet, right? You meet people of all walks of life. You meet the rich, the poor, as you said, the freely the jailhouse guys that just get out of prison,
Yep.
the police officers, and I always found that unique, right? I mean, you said it yourself, the peace pipe,
Yep.
right? Passing around that pipe and everything else. Um, it really is a place where you can sit, you can congregate. I mean, you literally, I've watched a known felon sharing a cigar with a police officer that busted them a year ago and everything, and all because of their love for cigars, pipes, tobacco, and everything. It's one of the oldest things that have existed for us.
One thing about it too is there's a sense of masculinity is alive in there, right? Because I look up to different guys, not just Masons, just other people who have walked a different journey than what I have. So you're being exposed to all of these different people.
Right.
Did anybody really have kind of an effect on you? And how did this, from working at the cigar house, portray into joining the fraternity?
Well, I would have to say the cigar shop was probably the biggest lead to it. Talking briefly about how I was influenced by the different Masonic symbols and the sayings and stuff like that. I was raised Catholic.
As was I,
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So I mean, it was you know Catholic Christian teachings and everything. The words of Solomon and everything else. It's there. It's all there. It's still in Scripture and everything else. You read it as a child and everything. However, um, my biggest push was the cigar shop because there were so many Masons, because there were so many gentlemen that I got along with, or I looked up to, or you know, I wanted to know more about it. You see these gentlemen come in and they got these beautiful suits on, and they're smoking cigars and they're drinking bourbon, and they always have such a pleasant demeanor
Yes.
about them.
Yes.
They always have this welcoming, brotherly feeling to them. Um, Never once did I ever feel like I was bothering them, So I mean, when you first came in and everything, you definitely uh influenced me enough to want to pursue it, and you start reflecting on what you know and what you see and everything else, and you realize, you know what? This has been in my life for a while. I think I need to see what this is about.
I appreciate that.
Everything.
That's very kind of you. Like I was telling some people, Mike, on the last podcast, I just don't bring people on just to hear how great I am. But it's cool on the testaments, just subconsciously, that just bubble up because I'm a part of your journey.
Yeah.
It was 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember. 22. I'm the worshipful master of my lodge, and I've been going to the cigar place forever. But we struck an accord, and we start talking. Not even about masonry, really.
It had nothing to do with masonry.
Yeah, we were talking about esoterics. We were
Yeah.
talking about philosophies, different theologies, even magic, and all this.
But do you remember what you first said to me? Do you remember the first thing you asked me?
I can't write off of everything that I went through this evening. No.
So I'm there in the cigar shop and I'm smoking a cigar, and you come in with a few of your friends, or possibly at the time brothers and everything. And you don't say anything to me. You buy your cigars, you guys sit down. I'm not one to just jump in a conversation over there because I know people like that as their space. And the first thing you say to me or ask me is, "Do you even know what that star in your hand means?"
Yes.
That was the first thing you said to me. And I said, "Well, of course I know what the star means. This star right here on my hand." I said, "It's a universal hexagram." and everything.
And why does that, for the non-Masons or even Masons who may not understand, why is that a significant symbol to you?
To me, it means balance.
How
It is
so?
balance. It has various meanings, but for me, it has always represented the balance of the universe. I gotta have balance in my life. I'm naturally a Gemini. I'm always in, back and forth, back and forth. I gotta have balance, and it comes from the old saying of "as above, so below." Right? I've
It's one of the
always
Hermetic lessons in the Kabbalion.
correct, and I've always kind of applied that to this. Right, as above, so below, as above, so below.
What does that mean to you? For, again, as these other guys maybe are not familiar with that
I mean,
terminology.
that is, I mean, that has so many meanings, right? And you can look it up and you'll probably get a definition as to exactly what that means. But to me, spiritually, it always meant that as it is in heaven, so we try and reflect on earth. As it is on earth, so will our sins be reflected in hell. As above, so below.
That's pretty profound, because that is actually for other non-Masonic esoteric orders or mystery schools per se,
Right.
that has been changed to fit, I want to say, Thelema.
Yeah.
Which is, for those of you that don't know, that was a religion based off of an occultist who I'm not a fan of, but somehow he comes up periodically on our podcast, Aleister Crowley. And I'm an anti-Aleister Crowley person, but I've studied because I want to know what I call the enemy. And he's a polarizing individual. But I like how you even use that, because the one thing that separates that logo in your hand,
What aspect? One tiny little aspect.
one time, is the clover.
The clover.
That is not on his hand, but is in the Thelema culture.
So in the Thelema culture, you would have a shamrock right in the middle. And that is the one thing that changes, right, between mine and what the Thelema beliefs are. So I was very adamant about not getting the because that's chaos magic. That's sex magic. I mean, let's just call it what it is. That's what it is.
People don't know what probably chaos magic is, but in the best way, if I may discuss this, because I've studied a little bit of it, again, to know the signals and sights of esoteric studies, is chaos magic is a kind of magic that my rituals and remedies of how I would perform magic. Masonry doesn't have any magic. This is just esoteric thought.
Yeah.
Just putting my disclaimer here.
Right.
My perceived rituals and ways are different than yours because they're not set. Keep that in mind. So it's chaos because it can be different for anybody. It's really, and I'm going to be bold on this, it's really a way where you can force your intent to make changes around you. But again, my styles and ways are different than, hypothetically, what your styles and ways would be if you were into that. Did that make sense?
No, that made sense. I think you explained it, broad stroke, obviously, but you explained it pretty well. Thing about magic, and I'm sure there's 100 people out there, if not more, that are going to argue with me and, say what they want to say and everything, that there's set rules and that there's a set beliefs and everything else. But just like everything, every belief, right, it's always open for a form of interpretation, right? In my opinion, my personal opinion, right, I've always felt that magic was more of a stream, right?
A stream, okay.
Stream, meaning that it doesn't matter if you're Wiccan, if you're Thelma, if you're Satanist, if you're Druid, if you're Nordic, it's all derived from the same thing. And I would even dare say that some, Christianity, some Islamic, some what's the Kabbalicism and everything else, all derive from the same stream. You know, when we join the Masonic fraternity,
Yeah.
right? We have to be in agreement and we have to believe in one higher power, correct?
We believe in a higher
We believe
power.
in a higher
So it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Jewish.
It doesn't matter. It's a higher power, a singular higher power.
Yes, it could.
Correct.
Correct. So, well, we have Hindus who believe in a god, but again, all those gods come from one overall god. There's Native Americans that believe in a great spirit. There's Wiccan in Freemasonry. Now, somebody says, and I've said this before, if somebody says I'm a Satanist, well, good luck getting through the investigation committee and trying to convey that. You really can't waffle. Do you believe in a higher power or don't you? Right? But I want to actually ask this question to you. How does a guy like yourself get involved with these different thoughts? Because you obviously had these thoughts before Freemasonry and you were into this style. So where did that come from?
I think I've always been attracted to more of the dark. I've always been attracted to more of the taboo, the things that hide in the shadows, I guess. Thing, you know, you're raised Catholic, right? I went to Catholic school all the way since I was preschool, all the way through high school, stuff like that. And you have that teaching from since grade school of, you know, God is God and devil is the devil. You avoid the devil and you worship God. And I agree. But at the same time, how are you going to tell me to not even look in the direction of the devil and then preach to me, know thy enemy? Correct?
That's an interesting take on.
I mean, so naturally, I'm going to start looking in that direction. Okay, so why do I fear this entity? Why do I fear this power? What is evil? You know, so you start diving into it. So that's where I started reading you know, Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy. You start reading forgive me, Milton. Start reading Milton.
Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost and stuff like that. You come across Faust and
that's an interesting story, isn't it?
It's one of my favorite stories.
Talk about a guy who I think he lose his wife and he wanted to live forever. I haven't read that book in forever. He makes a deal with the devil.
He makes a deal with the devil. Metaphysics.
Yeah. And he goes and he strikes his deal, but he pays a price in the end of that book. I mean, it's been out for hundreds of years, I think. So
there's 3 iterations to that story too. And one of the iterations is, like you said, he's a philosopher. He has a thirst for knowledge. And so he starts diving more into alchemy and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's an interesting old literature book. But it has a great story. I mean, no matter what, you make a deal with the devil, he's going to come. He's going to come collect his dues. Yeah.
Correct.
So you've had this thought, you're like, I'm going to pursue this. So it's kind of interesting. You went one way with it, just like I went in a way against Crowley, but I wanted to know, like, who is this guy?
Who is this guy? Why does he have so much influence?
Yeah. Why do people revolve around this? So, and then I like to, I've always been on the paranormal and supernatural as a kid.
I think everyone does, right?
Yeah, right.
You watch Scooby-Doo, right?
Yeah, and
that's why.
Yeah, you're just out there finding the mystery. But what's an interesting take on it though is I always said, if I'm ever going to have to someday deal with this, I want to be able to defend myself.
You want to have the tools.
I mean, that's why I wear a prayer rope.
You want to have the tools.
Exactly. I'm not a priest. I'm not a Gnostic. I know Gnostic priests. I know Gnostic bishops. I know people who are spiritual in their own lanes or streams, but
it's so funny that you should say that you want to be prepared. You want to be protected.
Yeah.
You look at every culture around the world, we have forms of protection.
I
that
see. I see you actually have a rosary around. Is that a rosary?
yeah, the rosary on my, I don't know if you can see this, but the rosary on my arm.
I can't really see it
No, it's so good.
from the
But the
camera.
rosary on my arm here was actually given to my grandmother by Pope John Paul II.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was. Do you remember when Pope John Paul II used to have uh um like almost like assembly lines where you'd people come out
Yeah.
and bless you and they'd move on and bless you and
I had
stuff
a
like that.
guy who actually he's dead now, but his aunt was a devout Catholic,
Mhm.
and they were on a plane because the guy was a cat. He actually flew the Pope. He actually his aunt said, hey, she's like, "Hey, will you take these things over to get blessed?" He's like, sure." He actually walks up to Pope John Paul and gives a huge like bundle, like this size of a bundle of rosaries to be
Yeah.
blessed. And
Yeah,
John Paul's just like,
wholesale.
yeah, exactly. He's like, this is not new to me. You know what I mean? So,
Wholesale blessings. Here
yeah.
you go. Good to
R.I.P.
go.
R.I.P. Captain Dave. So, yeah. So you're in this. You know this study, this culture, and then you join Freemasonry.
Right. Well, I mean, it goes with that whole. I've always I don't like being told you gotta, this is how it is and that's how it's gonna be, and that you need to just accept how it is and you don't need to pursue that knowledge.
Can you get a context you're talking about, like from maybe institutional religions?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. If more of the institutional, religions and stuff like that goes back to that whole grade school thing, right?
Yeah.
God is God, worship God, devil is bad, stay away from him kind of deal, right? Uh so naturally you hear all these stories, you hear all the rumors about the Masonic order and this and that, and you're naturally someone that's like me, that's not afraid to go into the dark shadows and find out what this truly is about. You naturally attract to it. So then when you work at a cigar shop full of range, right, and you come across Masons, and then you have a certain Mason ask you, what's that star on your hand mean? Well, then you start having a discussion, and then next thing you know, you're joining the fraternity. Not because I was influenced to join, but because I wanted to join.
Because it's been around you
my whole life.
your whole life.
My whole life.
So you petition. I'm the master of the lodge. I did your EA, which I was very proud of because I'd known you for a while.
Yeah.
You join. What's your experience when you go into this full circle? Because you were definitely seeing, may I even be so bold to say, you were kind of like, at least in search, not even in search, but just understanding the knowledge of even what I would call left hand, which is more of the nefarious kind of magic and esoteric arts. So now you're in Masonry, and I know we obviously don't talk about the rituals per se, but what's those symbolic steps in real steps into the fraternity? Like the culture, you're meeting all these strangers and you're joining a group with strangers.
I gotta be honest, like at first you first join, and I mean for me, it was intimidating. I gotta be honest. It was really intimidating. But at the same time, it was awesome, right? Because you feel like you're part of something that you've been missing part of your life, right? I've got a sister, yeah, but I mean, her and I, unfortunately, we don't talk or anything like that.
Sorry to hear that.
It is what it is, right? And you never have that connection with anyone. So then, like you brothers and everything else, and it's just it's I'm trying to convey the words and I can't convey the words.
Sure.
It's a feeling unlike anything you've ever felt, in my opinion. And then you start going through it, right? You start coming to the meetings, and you're involved, and you're seeing all this stuff, and you're just like, whoa, there's, and you go to the lectures and everything else, and the teachings, and it's you're in it. And at the same time, you're meeting all these people, and people are looking at you like, oh, you got awesome things. It can be a bit much. It can be a lot. In my opinion, it was kind of pressure because I wanted to make these guys proud so much. I wanted to be a good Mason, and in my head, I had made up in my mind that in order to be a good Mason, I needed to succeed outright, right?
By like proving yourself, by like, I just want to make sure I'm understanding and the audience is understanding. You felt like there was this sense of responsibility and that you needed to go above and
Correct.
beyond?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's primarily, it has nothing to do with like anyone in the fraternity, right? It has nothing to do with the fraternity itself. That's not what they did. That was, I think, what I had put on myself,
Mhm.
right? That was the other thing that was kind of mind-blowing to me is you don't realize what mysteries will be revealed about yourself when you do join the Masonic, right? Like if you just go into it and you're just kind of going through the motions, you're not going to get anything out of it, right? What is the one thing that was always taught?
Yeah, the more you put in, the more you're going to
you
get
put
out.
in, the more you're going to get out. So if you put yourself fully into it,
Right.
you're going to come across some things that maybe you weren't ready to deal with at that time. And for me, it was spiritually, it was mentally, you know, I'm very overly critical on myself and everything. And I think that's why I joined and am still in EA 4 years later. And that's kind of why I stepped back, was because I realized that I had a spiritual journey that I needed to go on, that I needed to correct myself.
So when you say that, I don't think the audience knows, because I don't believe it was talked earlier, but you're a young man.
Yeah,
You're married.
correct.
You have
Two girls.
two girls.
Right.
Walk us through like that sense of responsibility you're trying to uphold for the lodge in your mind,
Right.
as well as,
Be a
hey,
good
I gotta
father.
provide. Does your wife work?
My wife does not. I know that might be an unpopular opinion.
No, I mean it's
but
whatever the dynamics is. But again, you're the bearer, right?
correct.
Yeah, very traditional way of things are. She's raising the kids,
Correct.
and you come from this whole world of esoteric studies,
Right.
and I'm assuming that this might be stuff that your wife's probably familiar with.
Yes.
How so?
She has been, now I don't like to use the term witch. It's just, it doesn't sit well with me. Others might like to use that term. I personally do not.
Okay.
I use more of the term practitioner. I think that's more appropriate. My wife has been a practitioner now for, I don't know, most of her life, I would assume. Probably 15 years of her life, I would
When you
assume.
say practitioner, what do you mean?
I would say probably no different than those that would, you know, pray to Allah, pray to God, and stuff like that.
She
It's
does
just,
she has her own like ceremonies and stuff.
yeah, we have
As a
our own
practitioner?
rituals, we have our own ceremonies and everything, usually involving more nature, maybe involving more
Pagan?
I wouldn't say pagan because we believe in God.
Okay.
We believe in the devil.
Higher power. Yeah.
Right, we
Sure.
believe in a higher power and stuff like that, but it's more um connection with nature,
Okay.
right? Connection with
All
inner
is
self,
one.
all is one kind of
Okay.
deal and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then so you're being a part of this, you're providing for your family.
Right.
There was a time where you had to kind of like look yourself in the mirror and say, man, I'm on this journey, but I got to focus on what's going on outside of the lodge. And unless something's changed, I think without giving anything away, Masonry kind of invokes you to focus on your family, focus on your
You have
spiritual
to.
side,
You have
because we're always going to be around. So why don't you talk about kind of that journey you had to go on right when you were getting in the beginning thick of it, of Masonry? What was it like managing your personal life outside?
It was a lot more than what you would probably think, right? Because, like you said, I'm the only sole provider of my family. My wife doesn't work. I have two daughters that are in Catholic school and everything. So a lot of the financial burdens fall onto me, right? And then on top of it, I was in between jobs. The cigar shop, as much as I loved to work there, just was not paying out.
Sure.
So I had to go
Right.
find something that was gonna pay well. So here I am in between jobs, trying to uphold being a good Mason, and I couldn't handle the pressure at the time. So I decided to take a step back. I had to um I had to make sure my ashers were perfect, correct? Um because in order to have a strong temple, you got to have a good foundation.
Ah,
And my
well said, by
foundation,
the way. Well said.
thank you. My foundation is my family, right? And then my other frame would be my spiritual self, right? So I knew you guys would always be there, and I have every intention on definitely moving forward. But I definitely had to take a step back and take a look at myself and, is this who I am? Is this what I want? Is this where I want to go? How do I want to do this? It's a whole series of questions that you had to answer. And that may not be the same for everyone,
Right.
right?
Right. The big thing is I remember there was times, and if you don't mind, I'll say this, that you were reaching out to me months at a time, hey, I'm not giving up, Rob. I'm still here. I'm
Right.
sorry. And I'm like, stop.
Right.
Stop. Stop. We're here for you.
Yeah.
You need something. We're
100%.
here for you. I've met your lovely wife.
Yeah.
I haven't had the pleasure of meeting your daughters yet, but I've met your lovely wife. She's so open to this fraternity, and I know how much she supports you in this fraternity, and family comes first. I feel like that's like the overall
I think that's the number one
theme.
rule. That's
Well,
the number
that,
yeah.
but it's the overall theme of this podcast, because look at what I would consider the microcosm of the dynamic of what you were doing growing up to now where you are now. You switch that chair from being the son to the man,
Correct.
being that patriarch side, and responsibilities and obstacles are going to get in the way. That's part of have you ever read the Odyssey?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
One of my favorites,
Yeah,
right?
it's awesome.
Yeah, he goes on a whole journey to get back to his wife when the city gets captured, and he meets all these monsters. Monsters can correlate to obstacles, and you're on that.
Yeah. Yes.
But your brethren are always here for you,
100%.
and
Yeah.
we're here on the journey. So it doesn't bother me. I love how you're so into the spirituality of the universe. That's one thing that if I wasn't in this fraternity, I probably wouldn't go to that cigar shop, and I probably would have never met you, Juan.
Oh, you'd be surprised. We probably would have ran into each other at some
Maybe. We
point.
could have found out some circles, but I'm proud of you. I mean,
Yeah.
even from when I was master, you've always still responded. Your brethren are here for you.
Yeah.
Your family's here.
Yeah.
So what did your wife think? Going back to the family dynamic, what did your wife think of Freemasonry as a whole? Did she have experience in this?
Actually, her and I could get this wrong. I believe her great uncle.
Okay.
Let's just go with that. I think it's her great uncle was actually a Templar.
Okay, so he's part of York Rite Masonry. There's three appendant bodies. Templar is in commandery. So he unless there's some other order that's non-Masonic.
It was Masonic.
Yeah, so he was a Freemason.
Because there was a and I might get this wrong.
Don't worry, we can they'll correct us. Trust me, we'll get the emails. Mike will get the emails.
The Templar sword, right?
Yeah, sword.
Yeah,
Yep.
he had one of those, and then he had a bunch of pins to go with it and everything. And I always thought that was interesting and stuff like that. So it's been part of her life as well. So when I told her that I wanted to join, she thought it was a great idea. She thought that maybe this would bring me peace in my life and everything, because I've always kind of had a chaotic way of thinking, chaotic way of spirituality and stuff like that.
Mental health is so important.
It really is. It really is. And you don't realize it until I think you're in your older age and you're kind of going through it and stuff like that. So no, I agree. It's actually her that told me that I needed to stop being so away from you guys and that I need to finish what I started, right? continue with the journey and everything else. So I actually have her that I have to thank for giving me that kick in the ass, right? To continue forward. I mean, it's not that I'm being forced to. I want to. It's just having that support. And I know there's probably a lot of Masons out there that don't get that support.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
You know why, though? It's because, and this is one thing I really want to hone in with our fans and our audience.
Right.
Men, much like in society, so if you take, again, micro
Right.
with the fraternity to macro with our our country,
Right.
we've lost the art of discussion.
Correct.
We've lost the art to be able to articulate what it is to be a Mason. I get so bent out of shape when I go to the annual grand session and on the floor, they are talking about, oh, if we could just see people in pastimes just saying, outside of the lodge, oh man, if I could only just say, you'd be a great Mason, you need to join and solicitate a membership. Oh, that will solve all of our problems. Truth of the matter is, you and the other, well, more or less the others, not everybody in this world should be a Freemason.
No, I agree.
It's certain people.
I agree.
And I'm sorry, we're not going to lower the standard because you don't know how to articulate the benefits of being a Freemason. You don't know how to be able to give your experience amongst your friends who are non-Masons to be able to say, I'm a Freemason. When I'm in business meetings and I got to do bonding and rapport with people, and people will ask me typically, like I ask them, what do you do for fun? I say I'm a Freemason. You know what people say? Man, I've always heard about it, but I don't really know what it's about. That's the sales pitch.
That's the sales pitch, right?
That's it.
They set themselves up.
Yeah.
100%.
And you can talk about your journey. You can go, and make this a clip, Michael Lou. You can actually go so far as you're telling your journey and your benefits of Freemasonry and how I've made all these friends outside of college and lifelong friends. And I've learned the tenets of how to be a better man in the community and have this brotherhood. You can even go so far to say, listen, Juan, I can't invite you. We don't solicitate membership. To be one, you got to ask one. You can say that. But we don't teach people how to articulate Freemasonry. And I think that alone, with all the other podcasts, if men are knocking on the virtual door, that's going to be the savior of Freemasonry. To be able to articulate your experience. And people can understand because we're tribal people. We deal with stories, and with those stories, we can convey.
We learn.
What we learn.
We learn from stories. We learn. We've always learned from stories dating back from the cavemen. I mean, how else are we going to learn about, the journey of Jesus? If not through stories. How else are we supposed to learn about even in our own history?
Old Testament was like
Testament.
That.
Yeah. Even real history, right? The battles, the wars, if not told through a story of someone's experience.
Exactly. Like Odysseus.
And Odysseus.
I think it was Odysseus.
It was Odysseus.
Yeah, and the Odyssey.
Correct.
Just an interesting dynamic with the family and the journey in this podcast. I love it when the egregore starts working and we're all connected on the level on this. Listen, you have tattoos. Tattoos have been the norm. Tattoos are symbols. Symbols convey stories. Why do you have tattoos on your body?
I have always wanted, I've always been attracted to the tattoos, right? Because each one I always felt was a representation of something in my life. And I know everyone, they have various reasons why they get tattoos. Oh, I thought it was cute, or oh, I wanted this, or I thought this was cool, or this represents my grandmother and stuff like that. And, we all have reasons why we permanently ink our bodies. But I mean, for me, each one of these represents something. I mean, I've got my last name on my forearm right there. something that I designed that was, I think I was still in high school when I designed that. It's my last name, Guerrero. You know, I've got my kids here, my oldest, my youngest, and the child that we lost. And it's great because each one of these skeletons, I doubt you could see it, but each one of these skeletons, this one and this one, are children's skeletons, representing they will always be my children. Whereas this one here is an adult skeleton because it's the child that will never grow. It'll never be a person. So therefore, I give it a full human skeleton. These are things that I think about before getting them. Sweets to the sweet. Not only am I a huge Candyman fan, but I'm also, I represent something, right? Everything sweet in life, I give to those I love.
What's interesting is you're an entered apprentice, right? Just to clarify for everybody. Is that honeycombs?
Yeah.
And a bee?
Yeah. Yeah. My sleeve on the background is all honeycombs. Bees are the representation of life. Without them, in my opinion, we will cease to exist. Bees are everything. They are life, and I carry life with me everywhere I go. Little shout out to my wife. That's my wife right there.
Nice. I thought it was From Dusk Till Dawn for a second there.
Well, she used to do horror modeling, so I mean, this was one of my favorite shoots that she did. So I threw it on me and everything, and it's so funny too because when you show little old ladies, they're like, "Oh, who's that? Oh, that's my wife. What's all that red stuff? Blood."
Juan,
so
thank you again for coming on and telling your story. It's just beginning, and I just appreciate your time. We're coming up to that time already of a podcast. Yeah.
My goodness. Time flies when you're having fun, man.
I have one last question. In life, we're inspired by books, by quotes, maybe even by movies.
Yeah.
What's one thing in your life that stuck in your mind that it was just so profound when it came on? Could be a TV show.
Right.
Again, what theater? What was one time, scene, phrase, quote that has really stuck into your life? And if you could just put the mic right close to your, or, close to your face.
I'm a huge movie buff. I watch a lot of movies. I have since I was a child. I was alone a lot, so watching movies was a way that I could connect. And one of my favorite movies is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Like I said, I got
the original
with Gene Wilder. I got a thing, Dr. Seuss, Willy Wonka, still a child at heart. What can I say? And I don't know if you know the movie, but there's a movie where they're in a small elevator type thing and they're stuck and they're screaming. They're like, we need to get out and everything. And Willy Wonka is acting real nonchalant and he is acting like he can't find the door, and he finds the same door that they came through. And he opens it up and they think he's crazy, and they're like, we just came through that. Like, I want to get out of here. Let's get out of here. And he looks at him and he says a quote, and it's so silly to some, but to me it means everything, right? He says, "You can't go back to get out. You have to go forward in order to go back." And to me, that always meant that you can't go backwards and relive your life. You have to continue the journey forward. You have to keep going forward with it in order to look fondly back on the memories that made you who you were on that journey. And that's always kind of stuck with me ever since I was a child. So
that is my brother, Juan Guerrero. I'm RL Franks, and you are all square. Thank you.
See you later, Robbie.
Hey, RL Franks here. Thanks again for watching today's episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you believe someone can benefit from the message that we provided on today's podcast, send it over to them. You may inspire them.